The transport ship Times, Meridian Times, shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Emergency alarms screaming through the corridors. Commander Sarah Chen gripped her command chair, watching the damage reports flood her display. 3 days into their diplomatic mission to the Kepler system, and now this. Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Lieutenant Torres from his station. Life support failing in sections 12 through 15. Sarah's jaw tightened. 37 crew members, including herself, trapped on a dying ship in the middle of nowhere. The nearest human outpost was weeks away, even if they could manage another hyperspace jump. Which, according to her chief engineer, they couldn't. "Captain," called out Ensign Park from communications. "I'm picking up a signal. It's not human." The bridge fell silent except for the persistent warning beeps. Sarah had heard the stories about first contact scenarios gone wrong. Entire colonies wiped out because someone made the wrong gesture or said the wrong word, but right now, they didn't have much choice. "Put it through," she ordered. The main screen flickered, showing a tall, elegant figure with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. The alien wore flowing robes that seemed to shift colors in the light. And when it spoke, its voice carried an odd musical quality. "Distressed vessel, this is Healer Zix Thara of the medical ship Times Sanctuary *. We have detected your damaged craft and offer assistance." Sarah stood slowly, acutely aware that this moment would either save her crew or doom them all. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Alliance vessel Times Meridian *. We accept your help." The alien's expression shifted, something that might have been curiosity crossing its features. "Earth Alliance? We have not encountered your species before. Prepare for docking." Within an hour, Sarah found herself standing in the Times Sanctuary's Times Medical Bay, watching alien healers work on her injured crew with technology that seemed more like magic than medicine. Devices hummed and glowed, sealing wounds and mending bones with impossible speed, but it was Healer Zix Thara who captured her attention. The alien moved with fluid grace, hands glowing with soft light as they passed over each patient. Sarah had never seen anything like it, and she couldn't look away. "Your people are resilient," Zix Thara said, approaching Sarah after finishing with the last injured crew member. "Most species we encounter have much frailer forms." Sarah bristled slightly at the comment. "Humans are tougher than we look." "Indeed." Zix Thara's dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made Sarah's skin warm. "You interest me, Commander Chen. Your species fights injury and disease with such determination. It is fascinating." Over the next few days, as the Times Sanctuary's Times engineers worked to repair the Times Meridian *, Sarah spent more time with the alien healer. She learned that Zix Thara's people, the Valathi, were renowned throughout the galaxy for their medical abilities. They traveled from system to system, offering aid to any who needed it. "Why help us?" Sarah asked one evening as they stood in the Times Sanctuary's Times observation deck, watching stars drift past. "You don't know anything about humans. We could be dangerous." Zix Thara was quiet for a long moment. "Because suffering is universal, Commander. Pain calls to those of us who can heal it, regardless of species." Sarah felt something twist in her chest at the simple sincerity in the alien's voice. That's beautiful." "Is it?" Zix Thara turned to face her fully. "Among my people, we believe that healing creates bonds. When one saves a life, that life becomes connected to the healer. It is an old tradition, though not many follow it anymore." Sarah's pulse quickened. There was something in Zix Thara's tone, in the way those dark eyes seemed to see right through her. "Connected how?" "The bond varies," Zix Thara said softly, stepping closer. "Sometimes it is simple gratitude. Sometimes something deeper." The alien's hand rose, hovering inches from Sarah's face. That soft glow emanated from Zix Thara's fingertips, and Sarah felt an odd tingling sensation, like electricity dancing across her skin. "You saved my entire crew," Sarah whispered. "If we're talking about bonds, Yes, Zixthara murmured, eyes never leaving Sarah's face. You were dying when we found you. All of you. And now, Sarah felt a reckless impulse rise within her. The same instinct that had driven her to accept the aliens' help in the first place. Humans were known for taking risks, for pushing boundaries. Right now, standing in the soft starlight with this incredible being, she decided to push another one. I teased. Looks like that means we're bound together, Sarah said with a slight smile, trying to lighten the intense moment. But Zixthara didn't smile back. Instead, the alien's expression grew even more serious, more focused. The glow around those elegant fingers intensified, and when Zixthara spoke, the words seemed to resonate through Sarah's very bones. You belong to me now. The statement hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Sarah didn't fully understand. But instead of fear, she felt an unexpected thrill run through her. There was something in Zixthara's voice, something possessive and protective and utterly alien, that called to something deep inside her. Sarah started, then stopped. What was she supposed to say to something like that? Among humans, such a declaration would be either romantic or threatening, but this was different. This was something else entirely. Zixthara seemed to sense her confusion. Forgive me. The translation may not convey the proper meaning. In our culture, when a healer saves a life, especially in such circumstances, a bond is formed. The saved becomes precious to the healer, protected, cherished. Like property? Sarah asked, though there was no heat in her voice. She was genuinely curious. No, Zixthara said immediately. Not property. Something far more valuable. Among my people, we have a saying. What is healed by our hands is blessed by our hearts. You and your crew. You are blessed now. Sarah felt her breath catch. The way Zixthara spoke, with such certainty and intensity, made something warm unfurl in her chest. And if I said I didn't mind belonging to someone who saved my life? The alien's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time since they'd met, Zixthara seemed genuinely surprised. You would accept such a bond? Depends on what it means, Sarah said honestly. But you saved 37 lives without asking for anything in return. You've been nothing but kind to us, even though we're strangers from a species you'd never encountered. If being bound to someone like that is the price for survival, then I'd say we got a pretty good deal. Zixthara stared at her for a long moment, then did something unexpected. The alien laughed. A sound like silver bells chiming in the wind. You are remarkable, Sarah Chen, Zixthara said, using her first name for the first time. Most species find the concept of healing bonds disturbing. They prefer to owe nothing, to maintain complete independence. Most species probably didn't grow up hearing stories about owing life debts and honor bonds, Sarah replied. Humans understand obligations, especially when they're owed to someone who earned them. The conversation was interrupted by Sarah's communicator chirping. Lieutenant Torres's voice crackled through the device. Commander, our repairs are nearly complete. We should be ready to depart within the hour. Sarah's heart sank unexpectedly. She hadn't realized how much she'd been enjoying these conversations with Zixthara. How much she'd been looking forward to learning more about the Velothi and their fascinating healer. Understood, Lieutenant, she replied. I'll be there shortly. As she turned to leave, Zixthara's voice stopped her. Sarah. She turned back, noting how her name sounded different in the alien's musical voice. This bond we have discussed, Zixthara said carefully. It does not end when you leave this ship. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. What does that mean? It means that wherever you go in this galaxy, you carry with you the blessing of the Velothi. It means that if you ever have need of healing, of aid, of sanctuary, you need only call, and we will answer. And it means... Zixthara paused, seeming to choose words carefully. It means that you will always have a place among us, should you choose to claim it. The implications of that statement hit Sarah like a physical force. She was being offered something incredible here. Something that went far beyond simple medical assistance. She was being offered a place in an alien culture, acceptance among beings who traveled the stars, bringing healing to those who needed it. "And my crew?" she asked. "All of you," Zixthara confirmed. "The bond extends to all who were saved. But you, Sarah Chen, you are the one who accepted the responsibility. You are the one who spoke for your people and welcomed the connection. The bond is strongest with you." Sarah nodded slowly, understanding flooding through her. It wasn't just about being saved, it was about being willing to acknowledge the debt, to accept the connection, rather than trying to dismiss it or minimize it. In that acceptance, she had apparently done something that impressed the Velothi healer. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "Yes," Zixthara agreed. "But remember what I have told you. This is not goodbye, Sarah Chen. This is simply until we meet again." As Sarah walked back toward the docking bay where her crew was waiting, her mind raced with everything that had happened. 3 days ago, she had been a simple military commander on a routine diplomatic mission. Now, she was apparently bound to an alien healer and her people in ways she was only beginning to understand. But instead of feeling trapped or obligated, she found herself feeling oddly liberated. For the first time in her career, she had a connection to something larger than the Earth Alliance military structure. She had a place among the stars that had nothing to do with human politics or territorial disputes. She had found something extraordinary in the vast darkness of space, and somehow, it had found her worthy in return. 6 months after the Times Meridian Times incident, Sarah found herself staring at another crisis report. This time, it wasn't her ship in danger. The mining colony on Zirion Prime had been hit by what appeared to be a bioweapon attack. Thousands were sick or dying, and the local medical facilities were completely overwhelmed. "The Galactic Council is mobilizing relief efforts," Admiral Morrison explained over the holographic communication link. "But their nearest medical ship is still 5 days out." "The colonists don't have 5 days, Commander." Sarah studied the data streaming across her display. The symptoms were unlike anything in human medical databases. Whatever had hit Zirion Prime was designed to target multiple species at once, suggesting either an incredibly sophisticated natural pathogen or something artificially created. "What's our ETA if we leave immediately?" she asked her navigation officer. 18 hours, ma'am," came the reply. Sarah nodded grimly. The Times Meridian Times had been fully repaired and upgraded since their encounter with the Times Sanctuary *. But they still carried only basic medical supplies. Against something this devastating, they would be nearly useless, unless Sarah made a decision that would have seemed insane 6 months ago. "Lieutenant Torres, access our long-range communication array. I need to send a priority message on Velothi medical frequencies." Torres looked confused but complied. "Channel open, Commander." Sarah took a deep breath. She had no idea if this would work, or if Zixthara would even receive the message. But the healer had said the bond meant aid would always be available. Time to test that promise. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Alliance vessel, Times Meridian *, she said clearly. "I am calling upon the healing bond established with healer Zixthara of the Times Sanctuary *. We have a medical emergency requiring immediate assistance. Thousands of lives are at stake." She provided the coordinates and situation details, then waited. For nearly an hour, there was nothing but static. Sarah was beginning to think her message had been lost in space when Torres suddenly straightened. "Commander, I'm receiving a response on the same frequency." The familiar musical voice filled the bridge, and Sarah felt an unexpected wave of relief wash over her. "Sarah Chen, this is Zixthara. I am already en route to your location. The Times Sanctuary Times will arrive at Zirion Prime in 16 hours. Prepare your people to assist with evacuation procedures." Sarah blinked in surprise. "Already en route? How did you—" "The bond, Sarah." Zixthara's voice carried an undertone of amusement. "Did you think it only worked one way? I felt your distress hours ago. Your compassion for the suffering calls to me across the stars." The implications of that statement hit Sarah like a thunderbolt. The alien could feel her emotions across space. The bond was far more complex than she had realized. 18 hours later, Sarah stood on the surface of Zerion Prime, watching the most incredible medical operation she had ever witnessed. The Times Sanctuary Times had arrived with 2 additional Velothi medical ships, and together, they had transformed the dying colony into something resembling a functional treatment center. Zixthara moved between patients with the same fluid grace Sarah remembered. But there was something different now. The aliens seemed more focused, more intense. When their eyes met across the crowded medical bay, Sarah felt that strange tingling sensation again, stronger than before. The pathogen is artificial, Zixthara explained later as they reviewed the treatment progress. Someone deliberately created this to target the specific species known to inhabit this region. It is evil. Sarah had never heard such cold anger in the Velothi healer's voice before. Any idea who? We have suspicions. There are those in the galaxy who disapprove of the growing cooperation between species. They see diversity as weakness rather than strength. Zixthara's hands glowed brighter as the alien worked on a particularly difficult case. They are wrong. Over the next 3 days, Sarah watched the Velothi healers perform what could only be called miracles. The artificial plague that had seemed unstoppable was gradually beaten back, patient by patient, life by life. But it was the way they worked that truly impressed her. The Velothi didn't just treat symptoms, they seemed to understand each patient as an individual, adapting their techniques not just to different species but to different personalities, different fears, different hopes. Sarah saw Zixthara spend an hour comforting a frightened child of a species she'd never encountered before, somehow knowing exactly what that child needed to hear. How do you do it? Sarah asked one evening as they took a brief rest. How do you know exactly what each person needs? Zixthara considered the question carefully. Healing is not just about mending the body, Sarah. It is about understanding the connection between physical pain and emotional suffering. When we form bonds with those we heal, we learn to read the deeper signs of distress. And with me? Sarah asked quietly. What do you read? The alien turned to study her with those deep, dark eyes. Strength, Zixthara said immediately. But also isolation. You carry the weight of your crew's lives, your people's safety, and you bear it alone. It is admirable, but it is also harmful to you. Sarah felt exposed under that penetrating gaze, as if Zixthara could see right through all her careful professional masks. Command is lonely, she admitted. But that's the job. Sarah. It does not have to be, Zixthara said softly. Among the Velothi, we understand that even healers need healing sometimes. Even the strong need support. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the medical facility. Lieutenant Torres's voice crackled over her communicator. Commander, we've got incoming ships. 3 vessels, unknown configuration, and they're powering weapons. Sarah was on her feet instantly, military training overriding everything else. Get our people to defensive positions. Prepare for. No, Zixthara interrupted, standing as well. This is a medical facility. We do not engage in combat here. With respect, healer, if someone's shooting at us, we need to shoot back. Sarah replied tersely, already moving toward the exit. Zixthara caught her arm, the alien's touch sending that familiar electric sensation through Sarah's skin. There are other ways to fight, Sarah Chen. Ways that do not involve adding more violence to an already wounded place. What are you talking about? Instead of answering, Zixthara activated a communication device. The alien's voice rang out across all frequencies, carrying a authority Sarah had never heard before. Approaching vessels, this is Healer Zixthara of the Velothi Medical Fleet. You are targeting a protected medical facility in violation of every civilized law in this galaxy. Withdraw immediately. The response came quickly, in a harsh, guttural language that Sarah's translator struggled to process. Velothi scum, your interference in natural selection ends here. The weak deserve to die. Zixthara's expression hardened. So be it. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for decades to come. Instead of deploying weapons, The 3 Velothi medical ships began broadcasting on every communication frequency in the system. They transmitted the complete medical records of everyone they had saved on Xerion Prime, along with detailed documentation of the artificial pathogen and evidence of its creation. Within minutes, the galactic news networks had picked up the story. Within an hour, fleets from a dozen different species were converging on the system. The attacking ships found themselves facing not just the medical vessels, but a growing coalition of forces united in outrage at the deliberate use of bioweapons against civilians. The attackers fled without firing a single shot. "How did you know that would work?" Sarah asked, awestruck by what she had just witnessed. "Violence is a tool of the desperate," Zixthara replied calmly. "But truth is a weapon of the righteous. We simply made sure the truth could not be hidden or ignored." Sarah stared at the alien healer with new respect. This was more than medical skill. This was strategy, psychology, and moral authority combined into something far more powerful than any weapon. "You manipulated the entire galactic community into protecting us," she said slowly. "We showed them what was at stake," Zixthara corrected. "We reminded them that some things are worth protecting, and that those who would attack healers and patients are enemies of all civilized beings." Over the following days, as the crisis on Xerion Prime finally came to an end, Sarah found herself spending more and more time with Zixthara. The bond between them seemed to have strengthened during the emergency, and she was beginning to understand what the alien had meant about connection. "I've been thinking about what you said," Sarah told Zixthara on their last evening together. "About not having to carry burdens alone, and I think I understand now. It's not about being weak or dependent. It's about being part of something larger than yourself." Zixthara smiled, the first truly joyful expression Sarah had seen from the usually serious healer. "Yes. You begin to understand the true nature of bonds. There's something else," Sarah continued, gathering her courage. "My current assignment ends in 3 months. I'm eligible for extended leave after that." "And what would you do with such leave?" Zixthara asked. Though there was something in the alien's tone that suggested the answer was already known. "I was thinking I might like to learn more about healing," Sarah said. "About the Velothi way of moving through the galaxy, helping people who need it." Zixthara was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah began to worry that she had overstepped somehow. But when the alien finally spoke, the words sent warmth flooding through her entire being. "The Times, Sanctuary Times, always has room for those who understand the true meaning of service," Zixthara said softly. "And I find that I would very much like to continue your education in the ways of connection and healing." As Sarah prepared to return to the Times Meridian Times the next morning, she realized that something fundamental had changed in her understanding of the universe. She had started this journey as a military commander focused on duty and protection. But now she was beginning to see that there were other ways to serve. Other ways to make a difference in a vast and often hostile galaxy. And for the first time in her adult life, she wasn't facing that future alone. The bond that had begun with a desperate request for aid had grown into something she was only beginning to understand, but she was eager to learn more. The stars were calling, and this time, she would answer with a healer at her side. 3 months later, Sarah Chen stood in the Times Sanctuary's Times Medical Bay, wearing the flowing robes of a Velothi apprentice healer. The pale blue fabric felt strange against her skin, but no stranger than the sensation of light flowing through her hands as she worked to mend a broken bone. "Focus on the connection," Zixthara instructed softly, standing behind Sarah as she treated an injured trader from the outer rim. "Feel the pattern of what should be, and guide the body back to that state." Sarah closed her eyes, reaching out with senses she was still learning to trust. Human healing abilities were rare, but not unheard of among the Velothi's records. Earth's people possessed an unusual combination of empathy and determination that, properly trained, could be channeled into genuine medical power. The bone knitted slowly under her touch, and the trader sighed in relief as pain that had plagued him for weeks finally faded away. "Thank you, healer," the trader said, using the title that still made Sarah's heart race with pride and disbelief. "Rest for another day before resuming full activity," Sarah advised. her voice carrying the authority that came with knowledge hard-won over months of intensive study. "And try to avoid wrestling with cargo containers in zero gravity." The trader grinned and promised to be more careful, then left the medical bay walking normally for the first time since his accident. Sarah watched him go with a satisfaction that was entirely different from anything she'd felt during her military career. "You are learning quickly," Zixthara observed, moving to stand beside her. "Most apprentices take years to achieve the level of control you demonstrated today." "Most apprentices probably didn't spend 15 years learning to stay calm under pressure," Sarah replied, flexing her fingers and watching the faint glow fade from her skin. "Military training has some unexpected applications." Over the months since joining the Times Sanctuary *, Sarah had discovered that her background as a commander actually made her a better healer. The same skills that had helped her manage complex tactical situations served her well when dealing with multi-species medical emergencies. Her ability to stay focused under stress allowed her to channel the Valathi healing techniques even in the most chaotic circumstances. But it was the emotional aspects of healing that had surprised her most. Learning to open herself to the pain and fear of others, to truly understand what each patient needed, had changed her in ways she was still discovering. "Sarah," Zixthara said, interrupting her thoughts. "We have received a priority communication from the Galactic Council. They are requesting our assistance with a situation that requires special expertise." Sarah frowned at the careful tone in the alien's voice. "What kind of special expertise?" "The kind that comes from understanding both healing and warfare," Zixthara replied. "It seems there is a species that has been enslaved by raiders. The captives are being held in conditions that are slowly killing them. But the raiders' defenses make a traditional rescue impossible." Sarah's military instincts immediately engaged. "What kind of defenses?" They are using the captives' own suffering to power shield generators. Any attack that threatens the raiders also increases the pain of their prisoners, which strengthens their defenses. It is a particularly cruel system." Sarah felt anger rise in her chest, followed immediately by the healer's instinct to find a solution that would minimize harm to everyone involved. The combination of responses gave her an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. "What if we don't attack their defenses?" she said slowly. "What if we heal them instead?" Zixthara's eyes widened. "Explain. The shields are powered by suffering, right? But what if there suddenly wasn't any suffering to draw power from? If we could get close enough to heal the captives without the raiders knowing, their own defense system would collapse from the inside." For a long moment, Zixthara stared at her with an expression Sarah couldn't read. Then the alien began to smile, and that smile grew wider until it was practically glowing. "That," Zixthara said with obvious admiration, "is the most beautifully human solution I have ever heard." The plan they developed over the next several hours was complex and dangerous. Sarah would use her military knowledge to identify weaknesses in the raiders' setup, while Zixthara coordinated with other Valathi healers to create a synchronized healing field that could reach the captives despite the distance and barriers involved. "Are you certain about this?" Zixthara asked as they prepared to leave for the target system. "You would be putting yourself at great risk. The bond between us means I would feel your pain if you were harmed." Sarah paused in her preparations, struck by something in the alien's voice. "Is that why you're worried? Because of the bond?" "Partly," Zixthara admitted. "But also because you have become precious to me in ways that go beyond any formal connection between healer and patient." The admission hung in the air between them, carrying implications that Sarah had been aware of, but hadn't wanted to examine too closely. Over the months of working together, learning together, the relationship between them had evolved into something that neither of them had quite been willing to name. "Zix," Sarah said softly, using the shortened name she had adopted during their more personal moments. "What exactly are we to each other?" The alien moved closer, reaching out to take Sarah's hands. The familiar tingling sensation was stronger than ever. But now Sarah understood that it wasn't just the healing power, it was connection. Pure and simple. "Among the Valathi, we have a concept that does not translate well into your language," Zixthara said carefully. "The closest equivalent might be life-bonded. but even that fails to capture the full meaning. Try, Sarah encouraged. When a healer saves a life, there is always a connection formed. But rarely, very rarely, that connection becomes something deeper. The healer and the healed become two parts of a greater whole. Their emotions synchronize across distance. Their life forces intertwine. They become. Zixthara paused, searching for words. They become necessary to each other. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Necessary how? In every way that matters, Zixthara replied simply. I did not plan for this to happen, Sarah. But somewhere between saving your life and watching you learn to save others, you became essential to my existence. The declaration should have been terrifying. 6 months ago, Sarah would have panicked at the thought of being so connected to another being, especially one from an entirely different species. But now, looking into Zixthara's deep, earnest eyes, she felt only a sense of completion. Good, she said firmly, because I was starting to worry that this was all one-sided. They arrived at the Raiders system 12 hours later, along with a small fleet of Galactic Council ships. Sarah studied the tactical displays with a military strategist's eye, noting the positioning of the Raider vessels and the energy signatures from their improvised prison. The shields are definitely drawing power from the captives' biosigns, she reported to the fleet commander. But there's a gap in their coverage near the asteroid field. If we can get close enough, the risk to your medical ship would be enormous, the fleet commander warned. The risk to the captives if we don't try is worse, Sarah replied firmly. The assault began at dawn, ship's time. While the Council fleet engaged the Raiders' outer defenses, the Sanctuary Times, slipped through the asteroid field, using the natural cover to approach the prison facility undetected. Sarah found herself in the unusual position of commanding a military-style operation while wearing healer's robes. The irony wasn't lost on her, but there was no time to appreciate it. As soon as they were in range, she and the other Velothi healers began working. The healing field they created was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. Instead of working on individual patients, they were reaching out across space itself, touching the minds and bodies of beings they couldn't even see. Sarah felt the pain of dozens of captives flow through her consciousness, and she had to fight not to be overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of their suffering. Hold the connection. Zixthara's voice guided her through the mental link they shared. Feel their pain, but do not let it consume you. Transform it into healing energy. Sarah gritted her teeth and pushed harder, drawing on every ounce of her military discipline to maintain focus. Around her, the other healers were doing the same, their combined efforts creating a wave of healing energy that swept across the Raider facility like an invisible tide. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Raiders' shield generators began fluctuating as their power source literally evaporated. Alarms sounded across their ships as systems failed one by one. Now, Sarah shouted into her communicator. All ships, attack now, while their defenses are down. The battle was over in minutes. Without their shields, the Raider ships were no match for the Council fleet. Most surrendered immediately when they realized their situation was hopeless. But Sarah barely noticed the military victory. Her attention was focused entirely on the captives they had just freed. Through the healing field, she could feel their confusion, their disbelief, their growing hope as they realized they were no longer in pain. We did it, she whispered, exhaustion making her voice hoarse. Yes, Zixthara agreed, moving to support Sarah as she swayed with fatigue. We did, though I believe you provided the crucial insight that made it possible. As they helped evacuate the freed captives, Sarah found herself thinking about the path that had brought her to this moment. A year ago, she had been a military commander with a straightforward mission: protect human interests and follow orders. Now she was a healer warrior, using her unique combination of skills to save lives across the galaxy. No regrets? Zixthara asked that evening as they watched the rescued beings reunite with their families. About becoming a healer? About leaving the military? About bonding with an alien who can read my emotions across space? Sarah grinned. Not a single one. Sarah grinned. Sarah grinned. About bonding with an alien who can read. Sarah grinned. Even though it means you can never return to your old life? Sarah considered the question seriously. It was true that she had fundamentally changed: the healing abilities, the bond with Zixthara, the new understanding of her place in the galaxy. None of that could be undone. She would never again be the simple military commander she had been. "My old life was about protecting a small piece of the universe," she said finally. "Now I get to help heal all of it. That seems like a pretty good trade." Zixthara smiled, that radiant expression that never failed to make Sarah's heart race. The Valathi have a saying: "The greatest healers are those who understand that fixing one soul sometimes requires mending the entire world around it." "Is that what we're doing? Mending the world?" "One life at a time," Zixthara confirmed. "Though I have found that with you as my partner, we seem to be managing several worlds at once." Sarah laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Partner? Is that not the correct term? Among humans, what do you call someone who shares your work, your purpose, your very existence?" Sarah thought about it for a moment, then stepped closer to the alien who had become the center of her new life. "Among humans," she said softly, "we call that love." Zixthara's eyes widened, and the glow that always surrounded the alien healer intensified. "Love," the alien repeated, testing the word. "Yes, I believe that is exactly what this bond has become." As they stood together in the Times Sanctuary's Times observation deck, watching the stars wheel past their ship, Sarah reflected on how completely her life had changed. She had started as a commander bound by duty and protocol. She had become a healer, bound by compassion and purpose. But most importantly, she had become part of something larger than herself. The bond with Zixthara was just the beginning. Through the healing arts, she had connected herself to the suffering and joy of countless beings across the galaxy. She had become part of a network of compassion that spanned species and star systems. "Where to next?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Wherever we are needed," Zixthara replied, taking Sarah's hand. The familiar tingling sensation flowed between them, but now Sarah understood it for what it truly was. Not just healing energy, but pure connection. Love made manifest in the very fabric of the universe. "Then let's go save the galaxy," Sarah said with a grin. "One patient at a time." Zixthara